A new beginning. The sun rose brightly over the jungle, bathing everything in a warm glow. The battle against the Zarnax had ended, and Jake, Kira, and their allies stood together, feeling a sense of victory and relief. They had fought hard and won, but now they faced another challenge: building a new life. As they gathered in the clearing where they had trained, Jake looked around at the faces of his friends, tired but hopeful. "We did it," he said, raising his voice. "We stood up to the Zarnax and showed them we're not afraid. This is our home now, and we will protect it." The group cheered, their spirits high. Kira felt a surge of pride swell in her chest. She looked at the people around her, once slaves, now warriors. They had fought for their freedom, and they were determined to build a new future. "We need to make a plan," Kira said, stepping forward. "The Zarnax might come back. We need to be ready." Jake nodded in agreement. "We should create a watch system. If we have people on guard, we can spot any Zarnak movements early and prepare." The group discussed their ideas, each person contributing their thoughts. They decided to create small teams to scout the area, looking for signs of danger. They also talked about ways to gather food and build a more permanent shelter. Kira's heart raced with excitement. They were no longer just survivors. They were a community working together for a common goal. "Let's also train more," she suggested. "We need to keep our skills sharp and be ready for anything." "Great idea," Jake agreed. "We can share what we know and help everyone grow stronger. I'll teach some combat skills, and you can focus on helping them understand their powers." The day was filled with activity as they set to work. Jake led the group in combat training, showing them how to use sticks and improvised weapons. Kira took a few others aside, helping them connect with their inner strengths and hone their abilities. As the sun began to set, they gathered around a small fire. The warmth of the flames created a cozy atmosphere, and the sound of laughter and stories filled the air. Kira felt a sense of belonging that she had never experienced before. They were no longer alone. They had each other. "We should celebrate our victory," Kira said, raising her voice above the chatter. "We fought hard, and we deserve to enjoy this moment." The group cheered in agreement, and they began to prepare a simple feast with the food they had gathered. They shared stories of bravery and friendship, each person expressing their hopes for the future. As they ate, Kira looked at Jake, who was laughing and joking with the others. She felt a deep connection to him. He had become her friend, her protector, and her partner in this fight for freedom. She knew that together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. After the meal, they sat around the fire, the stars shining brightly overhead. Kira took a deep breath, feeling grateful for the peace they had found. "I never imagined I would be here, free and surrounded by friends," she said softly. Jake turned to her, his expression sincere. "You helped make this happen, Kira. Your strength and bravery inspired us all." She smiled, her heart warming at his words. "We did it together." As the night wore on, Kira felt a sense of hope for the future. They had survived the battle, but now they needed to build their lives. They were determined to create a place where they could be free and live without fear. The next morning, they set to work, building their community. They constructed shelters, planted crops, and continued training. With each passing day, they grew stronger, more united. And so, in the heart of the jungle, a new beginning began. A community of brave individuals, once lost and afraid, now stood together, ready to face whatever the future held. They had found freedom, friendship, and hope, a bright new chapter waiting to unfold. The final fight. The days that followed the ambush were filled with tension. Jake and Kira knew that the Zarnax would come for them, angry and determined to take back control. They had made a powerful enemy, but they were ready to face whatever came next. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kira and Jake sat on a fallen log, discussing their next steps. "We've weakened them," Kira said, her voice steady. "But they'll retaliate soon. We need a solid plan for our next move." Jake nodded, his brow furrowed. We have to gather more allies. If we can find others who want to fight against the Zarnax, we could create a real army. Kira thought for a moment. I know of a few other escaped slaves who are hiding nearby. They might be willing to join us. Let's find them, Jake said, feeling the surge of hope. The more we have, the better our chances. The next day, they set out into the jungle to find the escaped slaves Kira had mentioned. They moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows and listening for any signs of danger. Kira's senses were heightened, and she felt more confident with each step they took. After a few hours, they reached a small clearing where they saw a group of 5 people huddled together, whispering. Kira recognized them immediately. That's them. Let's go. As they approached, Kira called out, Hey, we're friends. The group turned, eyes wide with fear and surprise. Kira, is that you? One of them, a tall man with a worried expression, stepped forward. What happened? Jake stepped beside Kira. We're here to help you. We've been fighting against the Zarnax. We want you to join us. The group exchanged glances, uncertainty in their eyes. But the Zarnax are powerful, another woman said, shaking her head. We're not soldiers. We can't fight them. Kira stepped forward, her voice firm. We have to fight. We've already weakened them. And if we don't stand up for ourselves now, we'll never be free. We have a chance to change our future. Jake chimed in. We'll train together, work as a team. You're not alone. We'll face the Zarnax together. After a moment of silence, the man nodded slowly. All right, we'll fight with you. With their new allies, Jake and Kira quickly set to work training. They practiced using weapons and honing their skills, sharing what they had learned. Kira helped the others connect with their own inner strengths, just as she had done. As the days passed, they became a small but determined group. Kira felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. Together, they shared stories and laughter, building friendships that made them all stronger. Then, one morning, Kira sensed something in the air. I can feel them coming, she said urgently, her heart racing. The Zarnax are near. Jake's expression hardened. It's time. We'll stand our ground and show them we won't back down. They moved to a strategic position near the path, ready for the fight of their lives. The jungle around them felt tense, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Moments later, the Zarnax appeared, marching through the trees. Their dark armor glinted in the sunlight, and they looked fierce and ready for battle. Jake raised his voice, rallying their small group. This is our moment. We fight for our freedom. Together. The Zarnak leader stepped forward, sneering. You think you can defeat us? You are nothing but weak slaves. Kira felt a fire igniting inside her. We are more than that. We will not be your slaves any longer. With a roar, the battle began. Jake and the others charged forward, and Kira focused her powers. She lifted rocks and branches, hurling them toward the Zarnax, creating chaos in their ranks. Jake fought bravely, striking at the Zarnax with precision. He moved swiftly, leading their allies and coordinating their attacks. Kira could sense the fear in the Zarnax hearts as they realized they were outmatched. The fight raged on, filled with shouts and the sounds of clashing weapons. Kira felt her energy surge as she used her powers to protect her friends, creating barriers and distractions. Together, they fought fiercely, their spirits strong. Just when it seemed like victory was within reach, the Zarnak leader charged at Jake, determined to take him down. Kira saw it happen in slow motion. She couldn't let her friend get hurt. With all her strength, she focused her energy and sent a powerful wave toward the leader. The leader stumbled, thrown off balance. Jake took advantage of the moment, striking the Zarnak down with a swift motion. The remaining Zarnax faltered, fear washing over them as they saw their leader fall. Keep pushing, Jake shouted. We can win this. With Kira leading the charge and Jake rallying the troops, their small group fought with everything they had. The Zarnax began to retreat, fear and confusion taking hold. The big mission. The next day, the jungle was quiet as Jake and Kira prepared for their mission. They had trained hard, and now it was time to put their plan into action. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden light through the trees. Jake felt a mix of excitement and nerves as he checked their supplies one last time. "Are you ready, Kira?" he asked, looking at her. Kira took a deep breath, her bright green skin glowing in the morning light. "I'm ready, Jake. I want to do this." "Good," Jake replied, nodding. "Remember, we need to stick to the plan. We'll hide near the path and wait for the Zarnex to come. Once they're close, you'll use your powers to sense where they are, and we'll strike." Kira nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I can do this." They set off toward the Zarnak camp, moving carefully through the thick underbrush. Jake led the way, his military training guiding him through the jungle. Kira followed closely, her senses on high alert. She could feel the tension in the air, a mix of fear and excitement. After a while, they reached a spot where the path narrowed. It was a perfect place to set their ambush. Jake pointed to a few large bushes nearby. "Let's hide there. We can see the road clearly." They crouched behind the bushes, waiting. The sounds of the jungle surrounded them, and Kira tried to focus her mind. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her powers to sense the Zarnex. Jake glanced at her, proud of how far she had come. Minutes passed, and then Kira felt a shift in the air. "They're coming," she whispered, her heart racing. "I can sense them." Jake's eyes widened. "Get ready." Kira concentrated, trying to see how many Zarnex were approaching. "There are 5 of them. They seem distracted," she said, her voice steady. Jake nodded. "When they get closer, we'll attack. Remember, aim for their supplies first. We want to weaken them." As the Zarnax drew near, Jake and Kira's hearts pounded in unison. They could see the alien soldiers, their dark armor glinting in the sunlight. The Zarnax were laughing and talking, unaware of the danger ahead. "Now," Jake shouted, jumping out from behind the bushes. Kira followed closely, her heart racing with adrenaline. Jake swung his stick at the nearest Zarnak, catching him off guard. Kira focused her energy, lifting a few small rocks from the ground and sending them flying at the Zarnex. The rocks struck the soldiers, causing chaos among them. "Attack!" Jake yelled, his voice echoing in the jungle. He moved quickly, striking at the Zarnex with precision. Kira joined him, using her powers to create distractions, throwing rocks and creating confusion. The Zarnex were startled, trying to figure out what was happening. Jake moved like a shadow, dodging their attacks and striking back. Kira sensed their emotions, fear and anger, and used that energy to fuel her focus. "Keep going," Jake shouted, his eyes fierce. "We can't let them regroup." Kira felt a surge of power, and she closed her eyes for a moment, reaching out with her mind. "I can sense their leader. He's trying to organize them," she said quickly. "We need to take him out." Jake nodded, determination filling his voice. "Lead the way. I'll follow you." Kira focused on the leader, feeling the energy around him. She raised her hand, and a sharp stone lifted into the air, aimed directly at the Zarnak leader. With a swift motion, she sent it flying. The stone struck the leader, causing him to stumble. Jake took the chance, rushing forward and tackling the Zarnak to the ground. The other Zarnaks froze, fear overtaking their anger. "Now's our chance," Jake shouted. "Let's finish this." With one last push, Kira used her powers to create a shockwave, knocking several Zarnaks off their feet. Jake quickly tied up the leader while Kira focused on the remaining soldiers. They were outnumbered and scared, realizing they were losing the fight. "Let's get out of here," one of the Zarnaks yelled, turning to run. The others quickly followed, fleeing into the jungle. Breathing heavily, Jake and Kira stood in the clearing, victorious. They had done it. They had struck a blow against the Zarnaks. Kira looked at Jake, her eyes wide with excitement. "We did it," she exclaimed, her heart racing. Jake smiled, feeling proud. Yes, we did. And we'll keep fighting together. They both knew this was just the beginning of their battle for freedom, training together. As dawn broke over the jungle, the air was filled with the sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves. Jake and Kira had a big day ahead. With their plan in place to ambush the Zarnak supply run, they needed to be as prepared as possible. Today would be about training and strengthening their skills. First things first, Jake said, tying a makeshift belt around his waist. We need to practice your powers, Kira. The more you can control them, the better we can fight back. Kira nodded, her determination clear in her bright green eyes. I'm ready. I want to learn how to use my abilities. Jake led her to a small clearing, where sunlight filtered through the trees. This will be our training ground, he said, looking around. Let's start with some basic exercises to help you focus. Kira took a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. What do you want me to do? First, I want you to close your eyes and try to sense everything around you, Jake instructed. Listen to the sounds, feel the air, and let your mind connect with the environment. Kira obeyed, closing her eyes tightly. She focused on the sounds, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, and the soft buzzing of insects. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin and the coolness of the earth beneath her. Good, Jake encouraged. Now, try to reach out with your mind. Imagine your energy extending beyond your body, like a wave. Can you feel anything? Kira concentrated harder. I can feel something, she whispered, her brow furrowing. It's like a pulse, but it's faint. That's it, Jake said, his voice filled with excitement. That's your connection. Keep focusing on it. You're doing great. After a few minutes, Kira opened her eyes, looking both relieved and exhilarated. I felt it, but it was hard to keep it going. That's normal, Jake replied. It takes practice. Let's try something else. I want you to focus on moving something with your mind. There's a small rock over there. Can you lift it? Kira's eyes followed the rock Jake pointed to. She took a deep breath and stretched out her hand. She concentrated, picturing the rock lifting off the ground. It wobbled slightly but stayed still. Come on, you can do it, Jake encouraged. Imagine it rising. Feel the energy in your body. Kira felt a rush of determination. She closed her eyes again, focusing all her energy on the rock. Slowly, it began to lift. At first, just a few inches, but then higher. Kira's face lit up with joy. I did it, she exclaimed, grinning widely as the rock hovered in the air. But just as quickly, it dropped with a soft thud. That was amazing, Jake said, clapping his hands. You're getting stronger. Just remember, it's all about focus and belief in yourself. Kira beamed, feeling a surge of confidence. What's next? Now we'll practice some physical skills, Jake said, pulling out a small wooden stick he had found earlier. This will be our training weapon. I want you to practice some basic moves. He demonstrated simple strikes and defensive moves, showing her how to hold the stick and use her body effectively. Kira mimicked his movements, her face serious as she focused. Good. Keep your feet moving, Jake said, demonstrating footwork. You have to be quick and agile. They trained for hours, alternating between using the stick and practicing Kira's powers. She was a fast learner, picking up the movements quickly. Each time she struck or defended, Jake felt more and more impressed by her determination. As the sun began to set, they paused to catch their breath. Kira wiped the sweat from her brow, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I feel stronger already. Thank you for teaching me, Jake. Jake smiled, feeling proud of her progress. You've come a long way, Kira. We make a great team. As they sat down to rest, Kira looked at Jake thoughtfully. Do you really think we can beat the Zarnaks? I believe we can, he replied confidently. With your powers and my training, we have a chance. Together, we're stronger. Kira nodded, her heart filled with hope. Together, she knew they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their fight for freedom and a better future. The plan. After a quick breakfast of dried rations, Jake and Kira set out into the thick jungle, the morning air filled with hope and determination. They had talked for hours about their dreams and fears, and now they were ready to make a plan. "We need to find a way to stop the Zarnex," Jake said as they walked. "If we can hit them where it hurts, we might have a chance." Kira nodded, her eyes scanning the trees around them. "But how? They have more soldiers and better weapons." Jake thought for a moment. "You mentioned your powers, Kira. What if you could help us find their weaknesses? You could sense where they are and what they're planning." Kira looked unsure. "I can sense some things, but I don't know if I can control it. What if I see something terrible?" "We'll face it together," Jake reassured her. "And we'll plan around it. Let's find a safe place to talk and gather our ideas." They continued walking until they found a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. The sun shone brightly, making it feel like a secret hideout. Jake sat on a fallen log, while Kira knelt beside him, ready to brainstorm. "First, we need to gather information," Jake began. "We can't just charge in without knowing what we're up against." Kira thought for a moment. "I can try to focus on the Zarnex camp. Maybe I can sense their movements or their plans." "Perfect," Jake said, his excitement growing. "We can approach the camp from a distance, and you can tell me what you see. If we know their weaknesses, we can create a distraction or set a trap." Kira took a deep breath, concentrating. "Okay, I'll try to focus. But it might take a few minutes." Jake nodded, watching her as she closed her eyes. He felt a mix of hope and anxiety. He had never relied on anyone like this before. He trusted Kira, but it was a big responsibility. As Kira concentrated, Jake thought about the plan. They needed to be smart and quick. He remembered the Zarnex camp had been heavily guarded, and they needed to catch them off guard. After a few moments, Kira opened her eyes, looking a bit pale. "I felt something, but it was hard to see clearly. There were guards everywhere. They're planning a supply run today. They'll be distracted for a while." Jake's heart raced. "That's our chance. If we can intercept them, we might take out some of their supplies and weaken their camp." Kira nodded, her confidence growing. "I can sense their route. They usually leave at dawn and return before dark. We can set up an ambush along the path." "Great. We'll need to gather some supplies ourselves," Jake said, feeling energized. "We can use the time before their supply run to collect anything we can find. Rocks, sticks, maybe even some traps." Kira smiled, her eyes brightening. "I can help with that. I know where some useful plants and materials grow nearby." "Let's get to work then," Jake said, standing up. "We'll make this plan work. We'll show the Zarnex that we won't back down." They spent the next few hours preparing for the ambush. Kira led Jake to a hidden spot where they could gather materials. They collected sticks and vines to create traps, and Kira found some sharp stones that they could use as weapons. As they worked, they talked about their hopes for the future. Kira spoke of wanting to see her family again, while Jake dreamed of a time when the war would end. Each shared story brought them closer, and Jake felt a growing bond between them. By the time the sun began to set, they were ready. They had set their traps along the path, their hearts filled with determination. Jake looked at Kira, her eyes shining with confidence. "Tomorrow will be our day," he said, feeling a surge of hope. "Together," Kira replied, smiling back. They both knew the risks ahead, but they also knew they would face them side by side, ready to fight for their freedom and each other, sharing secrets. The sun began to rise, casting a warm golden light through the trees. Jake and Kira had spent the night hidden in their shelter, resting as best as they could. The jungle around them was alive with sounds, chirping birds and rustling leaves. Jake stirred awake first, feeling the weight of the previous day's events still heavy on his mind. As he sat up, He noticed Kira still sleeping beside him. Her face looked peaceful, and for a moment he admired her. She had been through so much, yet here she was, fighting for her freedom. He felt a strong urge to protect her. Jake gently nudged her. "Kira, wake up. It's a new day." Kira blinked her eyes open, and for a moment she seemed confused. Then she smiled, her green skin glowing softly in the morning light. "Good morning," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. "Are you ready to move?" Jake asked. "We should find a safer place." Kira nodded, stretching her arms above her head. "Yes, let's go. But first, can we talk? I want to share something with you." Jake was curious. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Kira took a deep breath, her expression turning serious. "I have a secret. It's about my powers. I can sense things, emotions, danger, even visions of the future." Jake's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Visions? What do you mean?" Kira hesitated, her gaze drifting to the ground. "Sometimes, when I'm scared or focused, I see flashes of what might happen. I saw us escaping the cage, and I felt it before it happened. But I also see other things, dark things." "Like what?" Jake asked, intrigued. Kira looked up, meeting his gaze. "I saw a battle. I saw you fighting, and I felt pain. It scared me. I don't know if it will come true, but it's always there." Jake's heart sank. He had faced many battles, but hearing Kira's vision made him uneasy. "We can change what happens," he said, trying to reassure her. "If we prepare, we can outsmart our enemies." Kira nodded but still looked worried. "What if I can't control my powers? What if I fail?" "You won't," Jake replied firmly. "You are strong, Kira. You've already shown it. We'll work together, and I'll help you understand your abilities. We're in this as a team." Kira smiled faintly, grateful for his support. "Thank you, Jake. It helps to know I'm not alone." "Now it's my turn to share a secret," Jake said, feeling a weight lift from his chest. "I've never told anyone this before, but I joined the military because I wanted to protect people. My younger sister was taken by the Zarnax a long time ago, and I couldn't save her. I don't want to feel that pain again. That's why I'm fighting now." Kira looked at him, her eyes wide with understanding. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I can't imagine what that must feel like." "It was hard," Jake admitted, his voice low. "But it's what drives me. I want to make a difference, to stop the Zarnax from hurting others." Kira's expression softened. "And you're making a difference. You saved me. You showed me that there is hope." Jake felt a surge of warmth at her words. He had never expected to find such a connection with someone he had just met. They were two broken souls trying to heal together. As the morning sun rose higher, they stood up and prepared to leave their shelter. Jake felt a newfound determination. They had shared their secrets, and it had only brought them closer. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to fight for their freedom and the lives of others. Building trust. As they sprinted deeper into the jungle, the sounds of the Zarnax faded behind them, but Jake and Kira knew they couldn't stop yet. They needed to find a safe place to rest and catch their breath. After a while, they spotted a large tree with wide roots that formed a natural shelter. Jake motioned for Kira to follow him as they ducked underneath. Once they were inside, the sounds of the jungle surrounded them, the rustling of leaves and distant calls of strange creatures. Jake leaned against the rough bark of the tree, trying to calm his racing heart. Kira sat down beside him, her bright green skin glistening in the soft light that filtered through the leaves. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, glancing at her. Kira nodded, but Jake could see the fear still in her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "I've been running for so long. I don't know what will happen next." Jake sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand. I'm scared too. But we're together now. We have to trust each other." Kira looked at him, surprised. "Trust? But I'm just a slave. Why would you trust me?" Jake shook his head. You're not just a slave, Kira. You saved yourself by choosing to run with me. You have powers that can help us. I believe in you. Kira's eyes widened. Powers? You really think I can help? Absolutely, Jake said, his voice firm. But you have to believe in yourself too. Together, we can make it. Kira took a deep breath, trying to process his words. I've never had anyone believe in me before, she said, her voice softening. I was always seen as weak. You're not weak, Jake replied. You showed strength by escaping, and you're helping me right now. For the first time, a small smile broke across Kira's face. Thank you, Jake. That means a lot. As they sat together in the shelter, Jake noticed how Kira's tension slowly eased. She seemed to relax, and he felt a warmth growing between them. They shared stories of their pasts. Jake spoke of his family and the reasons he joined the military, while Kira shared her experiences as a slave, forced to work and fight for the Zarnax. I thought I would never be free, Kira confessed, her voice filled with emotion. But now I have a chance. I want to help you fight back. Jake nodded, feeling the sense of purpose. And I want to help you find your freedom. We're in this together. Hours passed, and as the night grew darker, they shared their fears and dreams. The bond between them deepened, creating a friendship that neither had expected. Jake learned that Kira had the ability to sense danger, and he shared his military training with her, teaching her basic survival skills. Let's practice, he suggested, standing up. We need to be ready for anything. Kira stood too, her eyes brightening with excitement. They practiced simple movements, how to move quietly through the jungle and how to defend themselves if needed. Kira listened closely, eager to learn. As they trained, Jake couldn't help but admire Kira's determination. She was a quick learner, her agility surprising him. With every step they took, the trust between them grew stronger. Eventually, they paused to catch their breath. Kira looked at Jake, her eyes serious. Thank you for believing in me, she said again. I will do everything I can to repay you. Jake smiled back, feeling a warmth in his chest. We'll repay each other. That's how it works, right? Kira nodded, her smile brightening the dark night. They both knew that their journey was just beginning, but together, they felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The bond they had formed in such a short time gave them strength and hope, lighting their path through the unknown. The escape. Inside the cool darkness of the cave, Jake and Kira listened intently. The sounds of the Zarnax grew louder outside, their voices sharp and angry. Jake's heart raced as he thought of what would happen if they found them. He glanced at Kira, who was trembling but trying to stay strong. We can't stay here for long, Jake whispered, his voice low. We need to find a way out. Kira nodded, her green skin glowing softly in the dim light. I can help, she said, her voice trembling but determined. I know this area well. I can sense where the enemies are. Jake felt a surge of hope. Then lead the way, he said. He knew he could trust her instincts. They had to escape quickly. Carefully, they moved deeper into the cave. The air was cool and damp, and Jake could hear the sound of dripping water echoing around them. Kira walked ahead, her eyes scanning for any signs of danger. They crept along the walls, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Suddenly, Kira stopped. She held up a hand. Wait, I feel them coming this way. Jake's heart sank. How many? 3, maybe 4, Kira whispered. She looked around, her eyes wide with fear. We have to hide. Without thinking, Jake pulled her behind a large rock formation. They crouched low, barely breathing. Jake could hear the Zarnax getting closer, their heavy footsteps thudding against the ground. He clenched his fists, ready to fight if they were discovered. Did you hear that? One of the Zarnax called out, his voice gruff. They must be close. Search the cave. Jake felt his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at Kira, whose eyes were wide with fear. He reached out and squeezed her hand, silently telling her to stay calm. They waited, listening as the Zarnax moved past them. After what felt like an eternity, the Zarnax moved further into the cave. Jake let out a small breath of relief. "We need to go now," he said softly. They slipped out from behind the rock and continued deeper into the cave, moving quickly but quietly. Kira led the way, her senses guiding them through the twists and turns of the dark tunnels. Jake felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. He was risking everything for this girl. Finally, they reached a small opening that led outside. Kira peered through the crack, her heart racing. "I can see the sky," she whispered, a smile breaking across her face. "We're almost free." Jake pushed the opening wider, and they slipped outside into the cool night air. The stars twinkled above them, a sight that filled Kira with hope. But they were not safe yet. The sounds of the Zarnax echoed in the distance, and they had to keep moving. "Which way?" Jake asked, glancing around. The jungle was thick, and shadows danced in the moonlight. Kira took a deep breath, focusing on her instincts. "Follow me," she said, pointing toward a narrow path that led deeper into the jungle. They ran, dodging trees and bushes as they went. Jake felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins, urging him to keep going. He glanced at Kira, who was running beside him, her eyes filled with determination. As they moved further into the jungle, Jake felt a strange sense of connection with Kira. They were two people from different worlds, united by a common goal. Together, they were strong. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the trees. Jake's heart dropped. "We have to hurry," he shouted, pushing forward. They sprinted down the path, the sounds of their pursuers growing fainter behind them. As they ran, Kira glanced back at Jake, a smile breaking through her fear. "We can do this. We're going to be okay." Jake felt a surge of hope. They had made it this far, and together, they would find a way to survive. With Kira by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The encounter. On a dark, stormy night on the alien planet of Sylar, a human soldier named Jake crept through the dense jungle. The war between humans and the Zarnak aliens had raged for years, and Jake was tired. He had seen too many friends fall, and each battle left scars on his heart. But he was on a mission tonight, and he couldn't let fear stop him. As he moved carefully through the thick trees, he heard a faint sound. It was a soft whimpering. Jake paused, listening closely. He had been trained to be cautious, especially in enemy territory. The Zarnax were known for their traps and ambushes, but something inside him urged him to investigate. He followed the sound, his heart racing. Soon, he found a small clearing lit by flashes of distant lightning. In the center stood a large cage made of thick metal bars. Inside was a girl, unlike anyone Jake had ever seen. She had bright green skin and large, tear-filled eyes that shone like stars. Her long hair flowed down her back, shimmering like silver. She looked small and fragile, a slave caught in a nightmare. "Help me, please," she cried, her voice filled with desperation. Jake's heart sank. He knew the Zarnax captured innocent beings, forcing them to work in their mines and factories. Without thinking, he approached the cage. "Hold on. I'll get you out," he said, trying to sound brave. He looked for a way to unlock the cage. The rain poured down, making the ground muddy and slippery. Jake spotted a small panel on the side of the cage. He pulled out his multi-tool, hoping it would work on the alien lock. His hand shook as he worked, fearing that the noise might attract unwanted attention. With a soft click, the door swung open. "Get out. Quickly," he urged. The girl hesitated, glancing around with fear in her eyes. "What if they come back?" she whispered. "I won't let them," Jake promised, his voice steady. He held out his hand. "You have to trust me." Finally, the girl took a deep breath and stepped out of the cage. She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Thank you, human. I'm Kira." "Jake," he replied, giving her a reassuring smile. "We need to move. Can you walk?" Kira nodded, her determination shining through her fear. Together, they dashed into the jungle, the rain soaking them to the bone. The sounds of the Zarneks echoed behind them, shouts and footsteps growing louder. Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. He couldn't let them catch her. As they ran, Kira glanced at him. "Why did you save me? Don't humans usually hate my kind?" Jake shook his head. "Not all of us. I've seen too much suffering in this war. I couldn't just leave you there." They stumbled through the thick underbrush, barely keeping ahead of the Zarneks. Kira's heart raced, but she felt a strange comfort being near Jake. He was strong and brave, a light in the darkness of her past. Finally, they reached a narrow cave hidden behind a waterfall. "In here," Jake said urgently. They slipped inside just as the shouts of the Zarneks grew closer. As they caught their breath in the cool darkness, Kira looked at Jake, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved my life." Jake smiled, relief flooding through him. "And now, I'll make sure you stay safe." In that moment, a bond formed between them. Two souls connected by fate, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in the war-torn world of Sylar.